think athletic is really different when you ask people. Like, if you ask me what athletic is, I think jiu-jitsu, martial arts, flipping, strength, mobility.
Yeah.
You guys probably care a little bit more. I mean, you've done quite a bit of running, I know. I know you just love running and cardio. So it's like you guys think about cardio more. I think about cardio in like the 20-minute time domain. You think about cardio in like the hour time domain. You ask a circus performer what's athletic. Coordination, flexibility. I want to be strong, but I don't care if I can lift more than my body weight as long as I can do all my gymnastic skills. So number one is figure out what athletic actually looks like.
Yeah.
And like that immediately narrows down everything. Yeah, to be fair, from the perspective of like a piece of data, would be pretty nuts to get deleted from. Like, imagine you being deleted from the universe and then you just pop up in a place where there's now like dinosaurs are dogs, and you're just like,
sweet. Sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
I feel like that right there as a statement is a sign of what's going to be coming on this podcast.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Hopefully, I hope I bring some like useful information as well. It might be all the insane ramblings of like my take on fitness topics.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be a combination of all of it. I feel like there is going to be magic in there. So yeah,
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Hopefully you guys get something, or just me.
I mean,
chatting shit.
as long as we have fun.
That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
I feel like going back to what you were saying before starting, you might actually sit further away from the microphone.
Oh, God.
just because of the insane volume. It's beautiful.
I'm too powerful.
You are, like, just across all areas.
I do have like, I think, a magic power with my lungs where somehow my voice is just extremely loud.
All that stuff about certain things being bronchodilators.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, exactly that.
Certain things.
Certain things, yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna name them on the show. If Sam wants to bring them up, then he's welcome to later. But right, we should introduce ourselves. Hello, welcome to the Performance Proposition. I am Zab.
I'm Matt.
And this is Sam, Coach Tarun of Different Breed.
Coach Tarun. Yeah.
Coach Tarun, as everyone now calls you.
Also known as Sam. I still view Tarun as like an imaginary name, and people say it to me, and I'm like, oh shit, that's me. Yeah. Hey.
I love the fact that like you left to Portugal and you were Sam, and then you came back and everyone's like, oh, have you seen Tarun? I'm like,
where did Tarun come from?
It's actually my middle name.
Oh.
So when I became a PT, I was like, cool, I've got to change my Instagram to something. And I was like, Tarun's more memorable. Like, there's a lot of Coach Sams. Yeah. So I was like, Coach Tarun, not many people are called that. I mean, but...
Snap.
Yeah. yeah.
Plus, Big Sam was already taken by the pizza place. Or the fish and chips. It's a fish and chips place.
Is it?
It's a legendary fish and chips place in a tiny place called Pontyclun on the outskirts of Cardiff.
You're saying it's legendary, but I've never heard of it.
I mean, it's legendary in that tiny community in Rhondda Cenotaph.
Yeah. I'm sure all the Welsh people are absolutely loving your pronunciation of those place names as well.
I'm not gonna lie.
It's not as bad as I think there's an American girl on Instagram, and I'm not sure if she does it on purpose or not, but she's there going like, I went to Llan Clafferdoff the other day, and I'm like,
does it upset you?
Llewellyn, and I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah, that's
so
visceral.
Matt is easily annoyed.
Yeah.
Matt, have you got an intro for us today, by the way?
I do.
You do? Excellent.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I was watching the news. There's a really famous pickle on the news the other day. It's kind of a big deal.
Big deal. Fuck's sake.
Oh! That took me a minute.
I'm not gonna. Yeah. The dad jokes get worse and worse. I swear to God, as the episodes get better. So
I mean, that's the way we want them to go. The dad jokes are not supposed to be good.
Well, as we get older, the dad jokes should get worse, and we're just gonna tap into.
I mean, just wait until I'm actually a dad.
I was going to say, think how good they'll be once you've got that power within you.
Yeah, I mean, I've told you before about my dad and his like ability to just string me along in a conversation and then drop a punchline. And I'm like, I listened to you for 5 minutes. I was invested. And then it was a joke.
I've got to a point now with Matt, Tom Wood, and what's his name? How have I forgotten his name? Builder Mike.
Jesus
Christ!
Mike, if you're listening.
Sorry, Mike.
Only seen him.
It's been a long. I saw him 2 hours ago.
You've seen him nearly every day
in conversation with him 2 hours ago. But yeah, every single time I'm in a conversation with any one of the three, like the first 10 minutes of that conversation, I'm on edge, thinking that something is going to be a punchline. It's got bad. It's got bad. Anyway, we have invited you on to talk about training and your approach to training and your view on glass backs and all the things in between. So, do you want to break down a little bit about your company, what you do, how you started?
Yeah, God, I actually was thinking about how I would introduce this because in my head I'm still not really doing anything, but like I actually am doing stuff now. So I actually started this company because of you. I said to Sam, I was like, I think I want to be online, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, cool, you need to make up a company name. And we were sat in Sweatbox. I was like, different breed. That's what it will be. Just went with it, kept going with it.
The capybara
Capybara
still stands.
logo was all part of this original conversation.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah, and I just decided, I was like, I'm just going to tunnel vision on that. And then, just kind of worked with you on it for a bit, got some advice, just kept trying it over. But I think it all sort of came down, I mean, to be honest, like most people become coaches because they want a job that they enjoy, right? I didn't really start it to change anything, but I think then obviously if you actually want to make a company that makes sense and goes forward and does good things, you need a mission statement of actually trying to help people. So a big bit for me was, all right, let's make online coaching that's actually good and like does the thing it says. Because so many online, I mean, I get people all the time who are like, oh yeah, I used to have a coach who said they'd message me like within 2 working days and they just never did. And I was like, oh, I'll just actually do that. And they'll be like, wow, this is the best communication I've ever had. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to do so like that was number one, just do what we say we're going to do. And just make it a bit more fun, like offer everything. And that's kind of our pitch. And obviously there's things within that, like, glass backs. We talk a lot about like, just train your spine in different ranges, do some cardio, get athletic. But yeah, it all just comes back to we just want to make training that's fun and effective. And like the coaching's good.
So what are your who are the main people that have inspired the way that you coach now? Who are the main people that you look to from the world of social media? How did you,
He's just fishing for compliments now.
No.
Who are the main people that inspire
you? We can take me as given and we can move on to other people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it kind of starts in 2 places. So, for example, you are someone who, when I started coaching, you were definitely someone who I wanted to emulate. Because I was like, when I went to Sweatbox, which would be just over 3 years ago now, I think, which is crazy to think I've been a PT for 3 years. But it was like, cool, who's good? You, then there's like Tom Morgan, Harry, and I was just like looking at different coaches, like, cool.
What do they do well?
Yeah, what do they do well? How can I emulate that? And then as it kind of expanded out, a lot of the stuff I didn't start because I thought it was good training. Like Eric Bugenhagen inspired me to start doing the odd lifts, and I just thought they were cool. I'd never thought about the relevance to training, and then I started to see it pay off, and I was like, oh my god, this is genius. So you've got people like Eric Bugenhagen, you guys, like people in the actual life, and I guess social media. Angus Bradley's great. What's his name? Electron Performance. Alex Sterner, he's really good.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like a jiu-jitsu strength and conditioning coach and good at jiu-jitsu as well. So he's really interesting. To be honest though, I think most of the stuff I get on social media, like there's coaches who I follow because I like their approach and the way they look at things, but most of it's kind of just who I see in real life.
Fair.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff you do on social media is just finding memes and finding hilarious people.
Yeah, like most of the social media that I do, I follow meme pages about things totally unrelated to fitness, and I'm like, that's fun. No one's done that in fitness, and I'll kind of try and bring it over.
Nice.
That's the secret.
How are you going to incorporate Hock 2?
I mean, that's already been incorporated by.
That was the first video that ever blew up for me. Was just getting someone to spit in my mouth.
And doing like came from Sam.
Oh, it came from Sam.
Yeah.
Across the pond and then back.
Yeah. I'm amazed how much that blew up.
I think a lot of people watched it over and over again because of the fact they couldn't comprehend how you can I mean, I just remember like people going, have you seen what Sam's done? And I got shown that video about 20 times by the coaches in the gym. Just like, what is he doing? And then
yeah, the rest is history.
And now you're a legend.
We're getting there. We're making a bit of noise, but it's really hard to like position yourself in the fitness industry. Is the thing I found. Like my positions kind of come from just like relentlessly being like, I'm gonna just hammer social media aggressively with either like entertaining content or informational content till people can't ignore it.
Yeah.
But like it's a real fight to try and position yourself in. It's weird that can position you in fitness to get listened to.
I think it's funny that like in order to position yourself somewhere in the world of fitness on social media, you have to take this kind of like slightly polarizing standpoint, and it's like, okay, right, why are we not rewarding the people kind of in the middle that are just trying to be really freaking good coaches?
Yeah.
Because no one wants to comment on those things. No one wants no one wants to disagree and have people like their disagreeing comments. because unfortunately the algorithm's set up to be like, oh, you're retarded.
Yeah.
Everyone else likes this. Let's push it up the algorithm, and more people are going to shout at you, and then people are going to be like, hey, don't call him retarded. I think he's good. And then that discourse, like from people who have never met you, don't even know you, like fighting each other on your post.
I've definitely never had an argument with anyone on the other side of the world on social media about something completely and utterly irrelevant to anybody else ever.
You are the king of arguing with people on social media, like, for no reason. I'm like, Zab, you have a full-time job and a wife. Like, you don't need to do this.
Honestly,
I don't have time for social media. I don't spend enough time making my own content, and yet somehow manage to get myself into like positions where I'm like, I need to counter this.
Honestly, I spoke to him about something on, I think it was like a Thursday once, and then saw him on a Tuesday, and he was like, you know that thing that and I was like, didn't we have this conversation like on Thursday? He's like, yeah, well, it's the guy brought it back up. I was like, he brought it back up, Zab. Did he? Are you sure?
This is actually a 5 week gap between both conversations, and yeah. I shouldn't have. There are days, there are moments, little moments of weakness where you just kind of sat there and you're like, right, I've got 15 minutes. Oh no, this thing's really wound me up, and now I'm wound up for 15 minutes. I need to.
Yeah, I get it. I get the amount when I don't get it too much now, and I think it's because I just started ignoring it. I was just like, you just can't respond. But the amount of like racist attacks I got when I first started on social media was. I was like, oh, is this what most people are dealing with? Like, it's crazy.
I think it's mad that because like I said before, like I've had like the occasional negative comment, and it's like it's frustrating as hell to deal with. And when I look at your social media and look at the things people say to you, I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. Honestly though, it's like, I don't think it's that bad. Like, what I get, you kind of expect, because like that's just what people are like, and it feels a bit like being in a Modern Warfare 2 lobby all over again. Like, I grew up in the right era. Like, it doesn't upset me. I'm like, I've been through worse. Like, we all know what it's like. I think what you get in the fitness industry isn't that bad, because the kind of social media space of it, it's like a bit red pilly. You're going to get like weird right wingers, but that's about it. But if you look at some of the stuff, like people who work on OnlyFans, like I know there's like a lot of people hate on it, but it's like, it's just sex work. It's a job. Like, people do it. Some of they get like death threats. It's been like, it's insane.
I've always found death threats on social media like the weirdest thing to comment. I'm like,
yeah.
What does that say about you? What does that say about you and like who you are as a person, that you're like, I'm gonna kill you because you've done this thing that makes me a little bit angry?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's like footballers missing penalties, or fucking, I don't know, like people talking about COVID or whatever, and people are like, I'm gonna kill you.
Football. Or Gareth Southgate playing boring football. Yeah.
I'm going to kill you because your football's really boring, even though we're still in the tournament and we're doing really well, but I'm going to kill you.
Yeah. People get weird on it's because there's no face-to-face barrier. Like, everyone always says that Mike Tyson...
It's called the sniper effect, isn't it?
Yeah, because everyone says that Mike Tyson quote, right? Like, everyone's got a plan to get punched in the face or whatever. I think it's a similar thing. Like, in real life, if you said something like really vile and racist to someone, like, they're going to hit you. And realistically, if the police get called, the police probably aren't going to arrest them because they hit you. They're going to, like, find a way to pass it off.
Yeah.
Over social media, you can say whatever you want, and you can have a fake profile.
Yeah.
And it's like, it says... What my take on it is, if you're going to comment hate on someone's thing, you're probably in a pretty bad place.
Yeah.
Like, I've never thought about commenting hate, and it's like, if I was really depressed and I was like drinking all the time or something, then I might.
Yeah. I mean, it does come from that, doesn't it? Like, you have to look at it and go, what is going on in your life that you're so angry that like you feel the need to attack this person or that person for like such a minor thing? Like, what didn't happen in your life, or what has happened in your life that has like
led you there,
pissed you off to that point? And you just kind of like you say, you just kind of have to feel a little bit sorry for them and be like, I'm clearly doing better than you.
Yeah.
For you to be commenting that on me.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do. And I mean, a good thing I got told was on social media, people either want to be you or they want to fuck you. And so the people hating are either jealous of how you look because they're like, damn, like I'd want to fuck him if I looked like that, or they want to be you and they're jealous they're not. That's my conclusions on it.
I like that. I like the positive spin. You must be going through life really happy then.
Yeah, I feel great.
I'm pleased for you.
That's another 92 people that want to fuck me today.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, yeah, man. Yeah. Still got it. Still moving forward.
Training.
Let's talk training.
Well, so obviously, like we alluded to before, your sort of big thing on social media is glass backs and training your spine. Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of where that mentality comes from? Like what exactly like is that training philosophy
what
and
is
things
glass
like
back?
that? Yeah.
It's really hard to actually. A glass back, like in principle, I didn't make up this name either. I actually stole this from someone.
Yeah.
And just loads of people think I invented glass back. Glass backs was like a guy called Deadliest Lift, which I imagine you've both seen, who does. Need
to check out Deadliest Lift.
Oh my god, some of the stuff he can do, like it's deadly lifts, like to the point of where I'm like, I would never try that. But the strength he's doing is like insane. It's hard to believe. But the whole thing is just like, you're not fragile. You're not just going to break. And obviously so much of like modern coaching is built off the back of like, I don't even know what it's built off the back of. It's like just kind of bullshit things that people have decided at some point, like, the body just can't adapt to bending sideways.
Yeah.
Which if you watch any sport, clearly it can. Like the body can't like round. And
I think it's like you see decent coaches who are like, we can bend sideways, but we're not necessarily going to maximally increase load sideways. And then someone else has gone, right, well you can bend sideways, but we shouldn't load bending sideways. Oh, you should never bend sideways because it's too dangerous.
That's it.
And it's just like that transition. It's just it is mad.
But I also think it comes a lot from like GPs, right? Yeah. And I don't want to shit on the medical profession, but like to a degree, like a lot of the issues that come through that like people are struggling with now in terms of body image, in terms of like thinking their bodies are fragile and things like that, is because people would come to them and be like, I've hurt my back. How did you hurt your back? I picked up a heavy box and like bent over and like did my back in. And it's like, okay, cool. That must be the cause. It's not got anything to do with what you did before that or how you prepared for that, or like the fact that you do no strength training and you sit on your ass all day and do nothing. That's not got anything to do with it. But it's the way that you picked it up, or, you know, like the whole BMI thing and body image thing. And it's like a lot of outdated medical stuff that just hasn't quite updated, because we forget that sports science is...
Everything in medicine is like designed to cater to the masses, and the masses don't want to put in any work. Yeah. So everything's been like, okay, right, well, you're going to hurt your back if you round your back, if you haven't trained your back, because we're not going to tell you to train your back. We're going to tell you not to round your back.
Yeah. I would hate on the medical side. This is actually something, I made a lot of memes about this, but like, most doctors are fucking idiots. Like, to put it bluntly, like actually stupid. Like when you hear the advice they give people, and there's like, and maybe it's a problem with the way we have our health service set up. Like maybe doctors should just be doctors, and actually we should, and I believe this, you should normalise seeing a PT and normalise seeing a physio and having like a holistic healthcare service where they all work together. And you should have a mental health professional. But obviously, actually, what we have, at least in the UK, is you generally have a GP who does everything, who's extremely overworked.
And you can't get an appointment with.
You can't get an appointment with them. They have about 10 minutes, and they're not the brightest tool in the shed in the first place. And they don't even realise what they don't know, because, like, they're a doctor, so they just think they know. And it's like, well, you do a day on nutrition. Do you even actually know how progressive overload and resistance training works? Because, I mean, I'm sure we've all worked with medical professionals, and you hear their opinion on training, and you're like, you actually think that? Yeah.
Well, I think, like you say, it's also like a degree of people have asked them, or the medical service has asked them to step outside of their box. A lot. Like in terms of being able to diagnose a kid with pneumonia, or being able to like look at something and go, you need to go to this specialist or you need to go to that specialist. But the problem is that's all been normalized. They're like, right, you've got something in your lungs, you need to go see a lung specialist over there. You've got something wrong with your back, you need to go see like an x-ray, you need to go see a cardiologist because there's something wrong with your heart. But what they don't do is go, oh, you've got a problem with your body, you need to go see a body specialist. Like because they're not like, oh, go see this PT or go see this physio. A lot of the time they might be like, oh, maybe go find a physio, and then that person has to dip into this fucking convoluted murky waters of like, how do I find a good physio? How do I find a good PT? And then they end up with some like, you know, 19-year-old that's just passed their level 2, giving them advice on how to train because they've watched a couple of Squat U videos, or they've watched a couple of like someone else's videos and has gone, this is how you have to do it, even though I have no fucking idea because I don't have a Scooby. And then that just gets all mixed up, and they just go, well, I'm not going to engage with this side at all because like I can probably do it better myself. And then you just end up...
It's a murky, and like the fitness industry as a whole is like a dirty place. I think I'm realizing that more the longer I spend in it, because so much of it is how can you like trick people into buying a course that isn't that good and work for passive income? How much can you, I don't know, what can you sell? And people aren't often thinking about what makes people better and what is actually like important and true. And I think, to your point, where doctors either don't pass the mosque because they think it's a murky world or just don't have an understanding, then that's never conveyed to the individual with an issue. Like, people don't know you can just go and see a PT. Like, I mean, I don't think I even knew PTs like existed till I was maybe 18.
Yeah. And the nuts thing is like, sometimes they might refer them to a physio, but physios, again, kind of have this weird overlap where they try and like keep everyone at stage 1 rehab. Yeah. You know, like I've worked in like, you know, elite sport environments, right? And in an elite sport environment, you haven't just got a coach and a physio. You've got a coach, a physio, an S&C, someone who specializes in rehab that bridges the gap between the physio and the S&C. And you've got all of these different stages. And so even if the GP is good and understands they need to refer them to a specialist, they refer them to a physio. And then the physio just holds on to them and has them doing activation exercises and is like, just keep doing those and you'll be fine. Despite the fact that it's not the fact that their back wasn't active when they lifted, it's the fact that it wasn't strong and they hadn't been trained and it hadn't been exposed to load. Yeah. And so they keep them in this like weird stage 1 physio purgatory forever. Yeah. And they don't progress them.
See, but again, I think that kind of comes down to like the whole thing around who those physios are engaging with. So like, you get some really good physios that are really desperate to try and get someone through from the point of where they're injured to a point where they're able to live life pain-free and go on and pursue their goals again.
Yeah.
And some that would even like start to help them in pursuing those goals before directing them towards a personal trainer that they want to work with. But then the vast majority of those physios are getting beaten down, especially if they're working with people that are coming from GPs who've never trained before. Yeah. Those people are then coming from an environment where they've never trained, never done any exercise. They're coming to the physio, they're being told to do certain exercises. They're not doing the exercises at the rate they're meant to be doing them. And then they're coming back 6 weeks later, still in pain. It's like, okay, right, well, we're going to carry on doing this exercise until you start doing it. And then eventually we can load it. But it's like... Yeah. It's that whole thing as well. It's like one of the reasons why I actually got into personal training over physiotherapy was I was looking at becoming a physiotherapist. But then I realised that the vast majority of the time you're working with someone to get them from a point where they are injured and just unable to live life to a point where they can kind of just about get by and do their job again. Yeah. Rather than like helping someone go from a point where they're doing their job and they're living their life, but they actually want to pursue something more. They want to live on at a higher level and perform at a higher level. And it's like actually being a personal trainer means that every interaction you have is a positive interaction. Whereas every interaction you have as a physio is like this, like, right, I'm helping this person come from this negative place to a point where they're slightly less negative. But everything you do as a PT is like, okay, right, I'm helping this person to achieve something cool, and then I'm helping them find out what the next cool thing they want to achieve is and pursuing that. Yeah. And it's just like, that's what makes personal training such a cool job.
Definitely. It's interesting though that physios don't have that perspective, right? Like, it's almost like the fact that physios are just trying to get people from a shit place to a slightly less shit place.
But that's the medical industry as a whole, right? Like, if you look at like the world of medicine, it's like, okay, right, this person's in pain, I'm going to give them painkillers because that's the easiest way to stop them being in pain. Yeah. Oh, they're in a lot of pain, I'll give them these addictive painkillers because that's the easiest way for them to stop being in pain. Oh, they're now addicted to painkillers, but they're not in pain anymore and they can do their job, so cool.
Yeah, and it's a weird baseline that people view as normal. The best example I can have of this is I used to work with, you guys know Sam obviously because he's in the gym. For all the people who listen. Sam's a guy who got brain damage when he was 15, just turning 16. It left him with Parkinsonisms, Tourette's, a lot of movement difficulties, and I think he died twice in the process of like the infection and he got revived. Like, the guy's an absolute trooper. And then I worked with him. Now he's working with Aaron, another guy at the gym. But in the time, it's been like a 2-3 year span. He's 30 now. He learned to run again. He learned to deadlift. Like, I remember seeing him pick something off the floor for the first time when we started working together. I had to pick up his water bottle for him because he just couldn't bend over and get it. Now he can deadlift 130 for 2 reps. Probably more now since he's worked with Aaron. Like, it's like respectable numbers for someone without anything.
He's doing amazing things. But one of the best things, one of the most exciting moments was that first time that you got him to jump that I saw. I was like, that is awesome.
Crazy. But the physios he had after that injury, bear in mind, this was after what would have been 15 years of not being able to get any progress. Like, he'd worked with PTs, but they weren't giving him good stuff. One of the PTs he worked with was awful, but that's a whole other thing. But the physios gave him bean can exercises. They said do curls with bean cans. So that was the physio he got. He worked with some people who did medicine and stuff, and they gave him pills, whatever. But essentially they were like, yeah, that's just how you are. He couldn't pick stuff up off the floor. He was an athlete, he was an amazing cricketer, couldn't run anymore. He could get around. And the guy, Sam's a trooper. He stayed positive, did everything. But like we all know as coaches, and as soon as I asked him about what's going on, I was like, cool. So is it degenerative? No, it's kind of like stays as it is. It's not quite Parkinson's. So it can you learn new stuff? Yeah, I got a degree. Cool. So you can form new neural pathways. That means you can learn new movement patterns. And then it was like, okay, can you deadlift? No. Could you deadlift it if it was a bit higher? Yeah. So then you start thinking, well, why can't you progressive overload? Yeah. And then suddenly we came into the thing. It's like, I haven't done anything that special from the perspective of coaching. It's what like you guys would do, the exact same thing given the same problems, is exactly what Aaron's done. And within 3 years, he's gone from being just left like, yeah, that's how you are forever, to being able to sprint and deadlift.
Well, he's playing cricket.
Yeah, he could
catching balls, like diving for balls.
Yeah.
It's like unbelievable. His progress is insane, and it is. Yeah.
But the physios just had no interest in getting him there.
But there's that slight fear of like working outside of the box as well,
Yeah.
right? Like there's the whole thing of, okay, well, we've been told that there's a contraindication to this particular thing, and it's like, cool, but just explore it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can do within the boundaries of safety?
But most physios don't lift. I guarantee you the physios he hadn't ever been taught like actual progressive overload. Because most physios, like you meet a lot of NHS physios and you look at them, you're like, you don't have a clue what the human body is capable of, do you? Yeah. It's like you don't actually know what the human body can do. You know what an 80-year-old can do and what's considered normal movement. But I was like, it's fucking shit if all you can do is shuffle and get bean cans off a shelf.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're in a point where you've aged or you've got like a real severe disability and that's where you're at, like I'm not saying that your life isn't worth living. Of course it is. Like everyone can have really beautiful things in their life regardless. But if you can make a difference, if you can be slightly fitter than you were, why wouldn't you?
Oh mate, physical freedom is the most underrated thing ever.
Yeah.
Like, and is when because I've only just come over to do like one-to-one stuff and like you were saying about your business, when I sat down I was like, what do I want to do? Yeah. Like what do I want my thing to be? And my thing was always like, what have I most enjoyed about like being physically fit and stuff? And the thing that I most enjoy is like when someone says, do you want to do this physical thing? I never have to say no.
Yeah.
Like, and that was my thing, is that I want to create people that never have to say no. When someone says, do you want to go on a 2-hour mountain hike? Fuck it, why not? Do you want to go surfing? Why not? Do you want to go skiing? Sure. Do you want to go swim the fucking channel? Yeah.
Mate, I'd leave out the swimming just because I'm scared of sharks.
Really?
Like literally every
the
time,
English Channel.
Even in a swimming pool. The number of times as a kid I'd be in the swimming pool and I'd see that little line on the bottom of the swimming pool and I'd be like, fuck, I'm gonna get eaten. Like honestly, it was so bad. Like,
this is it. It's over.
This is my life. I'm not quick. How am I gonna outsprint a shark in the water?
Oh, you shouldn't have told me
this. It also
this.
does not help that I've been every time I've swam in the sea, I've been stung by a jellyfish. Like. I'd say, maybe not every
Have
time,
you
but
swum in the sea once?
at least 90% of times I've been in the sea, I've been stung by a jellyfish, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? But yeah, so I won't swim across the channel with you just because I will bring you bad luck. We'll at least be stung by jellyfish, maybe be eaten. But I completely agree with you. Physical freedom is so important, and like that kind of comes back to what you're doing, right? In the sense of physical freedom comes from a lack of anxiety around movement, and a lack of anxiety around movement is what you're challenging with the whole like anti-glass back thing, because there's too many people that are being told, oh well, you shouldn't move in this way, and like being told that there's this tiny box they can operate from, and until they can move perfectly, they shouldn't move. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, how do I ever know if I can move perfectly if I'm not moving? So, yeah.
I mean, that's what it's all about, really. Like when I think about glassbacks, like it's a way of framing it for social media where people get it. But the more like kind of complex and real answer is, like you just shouldn't feel like you're trapped in a box. You should have physical freedom, and that's what training is all about. And I don't know why people try and put people in a box. Like you'll be fine. You can really hurt yourself and be like actually fine as well. Like it's not that I'm saying you should train so you get hurt, but you can let your form deviate a bit. Like if you want to learn to do a clean and jerk, you're gonna have to do a lot of shitty clean and jerks, and you're gonna have to try and do them fast, and you might sprain your wrist, you might fall over, you'll be okay, you bounce back, and you can do more because of it.
Yep.
And like we said before, just manage the load on the bar. Don't go crazy. If your form breaks down a little bit, just kind of go, is this a massive breakdown? Like where if I'm doing it, I'm gonna be in trouble. Like is the load like big enough? Like if you're pulling a deadlift 1 rep max and you look like a question mark, you're probably like, maybe like my spine is not going to enjoy this like a super massive amount if I haven't done it a lot. But if you're like slightly out of position or your elbow ends up in a weird place or you like round a little bit as you're squatting, as long as it's within the realms of what you can cope with.
It's the whole thing as well of like understanding the adaptive process of like muscles and tendons and ligaments, and the fact that they do vary and they are different. Like every single part of that human movement system is capable of adaptation.
Yeah.
But like certain parts of it adapt more slowly. Certain parts of it require exposure to lower loads in order to create adaptation. Some like tendons want to be stimulated every 48 hours with a lower dose, as opposed to muscles that probably want to be stimulated once every 72 hours or so with a higher dose. Like just understanding how your body's going to adapt to different things allows you to effectively load and create a decent training plan that means that you're probably not going to break. And even if you do break, you're still probably going to be able to cope better than most people.
Yeah. And you know what, even with that, like, I think there's definitely an importance in understanding how the body works and adapts, but like, also just don't be a fucking idiot. Like, if something feels bad, like people ask me, what weight should I start with? I was like, I don't know, one that doesn't hurt. Like, what do you think? Pick something up, see if it feels okay. If it does, do it. And like, I don't want to hate on anyone. Like, sometimes clients will send me something like, yeah, this is RP7. And I'm like, mate, your head nearly exploded. Like, it's obviously a bit too much. The best one
I would love to know what their RPE10 looks like.
Oh, God, it would be insane. The best one I've had is someone came to me, they were like, oh, yeah, I think I need to stop back squatting because I like got injured. And I was like, all right, well, you hadn't trained in 2 weeks because you were ill and moving and stuff. Like, what happened? He's like, oh, so I went in and I was feeling pretty fired up, so I put on like 70 kilos and just went for it. And I was like, right, your max back squat's like 75. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, so you didn't train, you didn't warm up, and then you put 95% of your max. I was like, what did you think would happen? Oh, yeah, I don't know. I was like, is it the squat, or is it you just did something your body can't do?
Yeah.
We've all been that person as well, though, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah, I've destroyed my back before doing it.
Every time I come back from holiday, I'm like, oh, my body actually feels really fresh. Yeah.
Max out.
That's what you read. When
Let's
told
go.
to take a light session. Deload week. Cool. I deload by doing a 1 rep max on every single exercise.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Sounds great.
The other thing that I want to chat to you a little bit about, so like obviously a lot of what you do within your company kind of revolves around, well, a lot of what you promote online at the very least is around helping people to become athletic across the board, right?
Yeah.
And the whole idea of being able to train for multiple different outcomes at once. How do you structure that? How do you think about all of that? And
So the first step is like, I'll always say to them, nearly the first thing I say in any consultation is I'll be like, blah, 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 I'll build rapport. What, you know how it is when you speak to someone new, just general politeness. But I'll say, what do you actually want to do? Because being athletic is really different when you ask people. Like, if you ask me what athletic is, I think jiu-jitsu, martial arts, flipping, strength, mobility.
Yeah.
You guys probably care a little bit more. I mean, you've done quite a bit of running, I know. I know you just love running and cardio. So it's like you guys think about cardio more. I think about cardio in like the 20-minute time domain. You think about cardio in like the hour time domain. You ask a circus performer what's athletic. Coordination, flexibility. I want to be strong, but I don't care if I can lift more than my body weight as long as I can do all my gymnastic skills. So number one is figure out what athletic actually looks like.
Yeah.
And like that immediately narrows down everything. Of course, you still need to train all your qualities, but I'm like, cool, this is where their athletic range is. And you like just shift where your bell curve is, right? Obviously, it's not really how it works. That's how I think about it. Say I've laid out all my athletic qualities along here. I'm like, cool, their curve sits about here, less over here. And obviously what it would actually look like is it's easy to think about as a bell curve. From there, it's then, figuring out what actually works for them. Because the other thing is like people say to me, yeah, you can't train like that if you only have like three days of the week. I'm like, cool, well, let's figure out what training to be athletic looks like over 3 days of the week.
But also like what a week looks like. Do we have to think about a week as like a 7-day process, or can we think of it as a 14-day process? Do we think about it as 8 days, whatever? Yeah.
What's that adaptive cycle? You can adapt. So really, first step is what are your constraints and what's your goal?
Yeah.
And then from there, it's just making a program that makes sense. And I think that comes from like an awful lot of experimentation and talking to people. Like I go to Zab a lot. Zab's kind of like one of those, like you're like the MF Doom of Sweatbox. Like you're every coach's favorite coach. You know what I mean? But you kind of need to be a coach to get it. If that makes
I'm really
sense.
pleased to be invited Sam on.
I was going to say, I'm not sure your head will be able to fit.
There's definitely a couple of coaches that would disagree with you, but
but yeah, like if I'm pondering something, I just don't have experience at, I'll go and ask you.
Yeah.
And see what your take is, and then it's about applying that in a way that makes sense, and that's kind of instinct. This is where coaching is sort of a science, but it's also a bit of an art.
Yeah.
And it's like you need to be able to look at a program and go, that just makes sense and flows with this person's lifestyle.
Yeah.
It might not. There's principles I'll use. So I always go off what I like to think of as nervous system demand. Don't know if there's any science to prove this.
There's
but
plenty of science to prove it.
yeah, like if you need to be coordinated, you can't be tired. Like good luck doing something difficult if you're tired. If you need to be fast, you're going to need to have a little bit more than if you want to be strong. But you can probably have a little bit less than if you want to be coordinated. And then once you've done that, you can kind of just backfill what makes sense. Is it conditioning? Is it accessories? You know, what do you want to do? But as soon as you go in that kind of fatigue order, then programming just makes a lot of sense. If you stop thinking about body parts, if you want to do hypertrophy, think about body parts. If you want to do literally anything else, it has to be full body and it has to be in order of what your nervous system actually needs to perform those tasks.
Yeah.
And then I'll get really blazed. So when I do my program, I get real stoned. I'll write out all the big key factors and I'll just kind of let my brain do its thing. And there's because you can't put rules on it. You have constraints. Constraints are really important because they like draw you the lines and then you've got to choose how you colour it in. And that's you just get by doing coaching and talking to other coaches. Like there's so many times I'll say something to some coach and they'll be like, that's stupid. And like, because I've got an ego, I like to think I'm right, and then I'll go away and think about it for a day, and I'll come back to and go, yeah, you were right on that one. That was stupid.
See, we had a conversation about your programming strategy before, and like actually we've got quite a similar idea in the sense of, right, you have this week plan or this like timeline that you're able to train over, and realistically, you know what work you need to get done. So the key thing is to just write those things down, kind of almost list them, and then just try and figure out how to piece them into your week.
Yeah.
And like what you were saying, so there's two things that like need to be thought of when it's like thinking about the order of exercise stuff. So it's your central nervous system demands, and it's kind of your energy system demands as well. So like typically anything that's got a high demand in terms of central nervous system activity is going to have a relatively low demand in terms of like total energy demanded from that session. But like, so you're going to transition from like high intensity to low intensity over the course of the week, low volume to high volume over the course of the week. And then the coordination stuff, it's like at the start of the week, you want to do any coordination work that has like a high central nervous system demand. So if you're doing like muscle ups and things like that, you probably want to put them at the start of the week where you're actually able to do them. Whereas like if you're doing something that's highly coordinated but doesn't actually require a large amount of force, you can potentially do it later in the week. And under conditions of fatigue, you might not be able to do it as well. But that just means you're putting a bigger challenge on that coordination. Yeah. So you get the benefit from less time, and that's like But anyway, we're talking concurrent training. The other side of concurrent training stuff is around the interference effect.
Yeah. So I have a lot of opinions on this.
I know you do. I wanted to ask you about it, but yeah.
Interference effect is definitely real. I hate on it. Again, a lot of the opinions I put on Instagram, I think people don't realise this is like, Instagram is Instagram. When I actually talk about this to my clients, there's a lot more nuance to it. Like, if you want to be the very best powerlifter you can be, and you're talking like top 0.1% of your potential, of course, if you're trying to run a marathon at the same time, like you're probably not going to be the best. Maybe with enough steroids. Like if we look at the CrossFit Games, with enough steroids, maybe. But there's going to be overlap. But if you want to get into the top 1%, even like the top 5%, definitely the top 1%, you can actually do quite a lot before it has any effect. And I think that's what most people forget. And that's kind of where I fall into it. Is like my deadlift, for example, I've done 273 weighing 69 kilos, which is, you know, you can't get much better than that before you're talking about like, and there's people who are doing a lot more, but when you start jumping that gap, it's like that number is, you know, top 5%, it's probably top 1% really. The gap up here is huge. I've probably got to put the amount of work in it's taken me to get here. I don't care about being the very best at deadlifting. If you do, fair enough, but I don't want to just care about that because that sounds like a bit of a sad and boring life.
You're spending 3 days a week deadlifting and the rest of the time eating. I mean, it doesn't sound too bad. The whole like eating as many burgers and cakes as you possibly can to get as big as possible.
I also want to be able to go on a jog with my girlfriend and like
live past 40.
And enjoy sport and things like that. So it's like, okay, well, if I consider the bigger picture of what my training goals are and the things that make me happy in life, I don't want to be the top 1%. I don't need to train like the top 1% to get to the top 5%, and then you can just do everything else. And it's like, stop worrying about it, guys. Like, you just don't need to worry.
I think that's the main point, isn't it? Is like most people who train aren't even like getting close to. Most people who train are in the top 5% anyway.
Yeah, this is it.
So if you're elite, and you're doing you're like, say you're rugby sevens player, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the most concurrent requiring things where you've got to be powerful, you've got to be quick, you've got to be fucking fit.
Yeah.
You like, especially if you're playing sevens tournaments and you're playing like 6 games, like say you go deep into it and you're playing like 8 games across a weekend.
Yes, insane.
And you're sprinting for the majority of those games and you're having to deal with that, then yeah, you probably need to think about, how am I balancing my conditioning? How am I balancing my speed? How am I balancing my strength?
Yeah.
And reducing the interference. But even at that level, it's probably more like how energy demanding and how joint demanding like are the things that you're doing. And like, because I mean, when I worked with the sevens guys, like it was as simple as, on days where you do a lot of running in your training session, we do uppers.
Yeah.
And on days where you're doing more speed stuff, we do lowers.
And it makes sense. And what's amazing about that is like, people don't realise how little you need to know to write a good program.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, if your knees hurt, let's not do that.
That's the thing that's really frustrating about the whole conversation, right? It's like, it really doesn't take that much knowledge for you to be an expert and to have to understand that whole grey area.
Yeah.
Like, you might not understand exactly how long you should leave between a session and another session in order to completely mitigate the interference effect.
Yeah.
But for most people, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And just knowing that it's there and knowing it exists allows you to write better programs.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were saying, like working in that area was like,
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, if you're gonna do marathon training and strength training, you probably need to eat more food.
Yeah.
As well.
Well, there's also an argument that like, is the interference effect real, or is there like a finite amount of recovery? Because it's like I say, if you just start juicing people up, it's like, well, that interference effect stops being a factor for a bit later and a bit later and a bit. Yeah. And that's not to say that anyone, like, you should just go and juice. Like, that's not my take on fitness. But the point being, like, for anyone I'm going to work with, like, an elite athlete is not coming to work with a coach like me. I'm a good coach. I can make people really athletic. But if you're a UFC champion, you're going to need someone who's getting into the nitty gritty more than me. 99% of people aren't getting into the nitty gritty. They need bigger picture stuff where we're looking at, okay, well, how does your job affect the way you can interact with training? Do you enjoy the training you're doing? You know, PT for... I don't even want to say Gen Pop, because a lot of like Gen Pop people are like really
Gen Pop
shit.
people are taking their fitness quite seriously now.
Yeah,
as well.
like it's like you can be pretty
yeah.
elite and like it still matters, but it's like, it's just not the same.
No.
There's such that people don't understand the levels, though. I think it's very hard to understand the difference between being top 10 and top 100. Like even that is like...
Yeah, but I mean, in the same breath, mate, don't sell yourself short. Like, you're probably a good enough coach to coach like most top athletes, because most top athletes are just, the reason they're top athletes is their commitment to like their training and the fact that most of them have a genetic advantage. And so like, think of the clients that you've got where you can just throw anything at them and they get more athletic.
Oh, there's
like
some is insane.
Yeah, that's what you're working with. And like, so like you could easily program for a top UFC guy because it follows the same principles. And like the best coaches I've met in like my time, like in that domain, like meeting those kind of coaches and like speaking to them are the ones who go the complete opposite way to the way that we think they need to think. And like most of them are just like, we just do it simply. Like I said, like when I was like the guy I worked with at Scotland Sevens, where I was like, all we did was uppers on the running days. And he's one of the best coaches that I've ever worked with.
Interesting.
And his attitude was just like, it doesn't need to be more complex than this. We track what we can track. We follow where that data takes us and we adjust around that. Yeah. And like, what do rugby players need? They need to be fucking jacked up top and they need to have powerful, strong lower body. We sort the S&C to match that. We plan the S&C around the training so that it interferes as little as possible with the training of the sport they're actually doing. And that's it. And then when we have them in preseason and we have a little bit more control, we ramp up the intensity and we try and make some changes in that time period. And then when their sport needs to take preference, we pull back on the intensity of the S&C and we supplement the stuff they're not getting from their sport. Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah. It's true. No, I agree. Like, I think I've got the confidence where I'm like, I know I could do a decent job, but obviously, you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
There's people who have a better understanding about certain areas,
The
but like, and like
specifics,
could
yeah.
potentially write a very, 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 very good specific program for that
Yeah.
individual. But equally, like the vast majority of athletes aren't necessarily going to those people either,
No.
because they're still looking for the person that's going to give them that what they think is going to be that 1%.
Yeah, they're still going to functional patterns.
I'm gonna actually start defending functional patterns because I do.
I'm looking forward to it.
But we've said this before, right? It's the whole thing around Joel Seaman, the whole thing around Squat U, the whole thing around functional patterns. A lot of what each and every single one of those people is saying is genius.
Yeah, 50% is absolute genius. 50% is like so in the toilet. Like, it almost makes me think they've come across the genius stuff by luck. It's not by like process.
I think it's like you said before about trying to sell.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Like, that's the reason 50% of it is genius and 50% is toilet. Because they're like, we know that 50% of this is genius, but we also know that like what other people are doing is pretty much what like this genius bit. But we need to convince them that like there's more to it than that. Yeah. And so we have to add these other things in to make it seem like this is different to that. It's like the whole focus around Pilates, and you're like, it's just a fancy way of saying core work.
Yeah, I don't really get Pilates. Pilates is weird. Pilates is one though. People go to it and they're like, yeah, it fixed everything. I'm like, did it?
But the thing is, it probably did, because the people who go to Pilates want training for health.
Yeah.
They don't want training to be athletic. And I mean, we've said before, haven't we? They're like, we don't train for health.
But
we
like,
train.
Pilates can be about training for performance as well, right? Like you can progressively
Well, you can
overload.
incorporate it into training for performance, but you probably...
But it could be a fundamental aspect of training for performance. At the end of the day, it's core control, coordination.
But it's not going to be the only aspect. I think that's my point. Is
like-
it's a piece of a puzzle, Pilates, right?
Yeah.
But like the people who get the most from it are the ones who are literally just there because they want to be healthy. And so you can be a really healthy, active human being by just doing Pilates. But like I said, the things that we do, like I'm well aware that I'm probably shortening my life with some of the shit that I do in the gym, but I don't care because I want to look like a fucking shaved gorilla. So
Nice.
that's the goal.
You've
And I'm
already
like,
succeeded. Like
I'm moving up. I'm probably like chimp now.
I'd say the other people that benefit from things like Pilates and yoga are the people that wouldn't do those things within their S&C.
Yeah.
So like, you know, how many people do you know that you've written a core workout for, and then you check in with them and they've not done their core work?
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
don't get me started. I had this argument.
but like,
oh, don't get me started.
Athletes who are naturally quick, naturally strong, and like have that advantage, but have really weak floppy cores, they benefit from things like Pilates because of the fact it's like, okay, right, this is the thing that you're not getting from your sport. In your sport, you're already working at a really high intensity. You're already running really quickly. You're already lifting like relatively heavy people and throwing them around like they're nothing. Let's just add in this little
but
bit.
can you move your pelvis on its own?
Hey, being able to move your pelvis on its own is a key aspect of life.
Do you know what? So it's actually really useful. There's so much with sport training, and this is where functional patterns is really weird, because it's like they've taken like a bit of training that should be part of the bigger picture and they've just made it its own thing and said everything else will do damage.
Yeah.
And it's like that's not what Pilates does. I don't really know what Pilates is. It's a bad example because I don't understand what it is.
Okay,
I just see it on Instagram
let's go back.
sometimes.
Let's go back to FP then. Let's just link it back to FP. So
But
what you were saying is like,
I mean, similarly with Pilates though, it's like one of these things where you take a really niche part of training that should be part of what you do and they try and make it everything, but that comes with its own flaws in and of itself. And actually creating like a really holistic training plan is quite hard because there's so much to do.
Yeah.
You do it over 4 days, it's really easy. You get to 5 days, it becomes one of the most convoluted things to try and create of all time. Yeah. But you need to, like, if you think about what a human should be able to do, I call it the 3 Fs. I think there's the 3 Fs that the human body should be able to do. Fight, because you had to survive. Fuck, because you had to reproduce. And I call it flight, but like run. You have to be able to do locomotion. And climb, swing, swim. That's all a human body should do. But all of those things are very different and provide like kind of different stimulus. And we're just trying to mimic things that help that in training. But if you just do functional patterns, like I know they say they make you better at running, but like there's a reason Usain Bolt didn't do functional patterns because his training made more sense for that. I'm pretty sure he just smashed leg extensions.
I mean, he just
And,
did
like,
lots of
machines.
He was
did a
also
lot of
just
sprints, right?
Built to sprint.
I think it's the whole thing though. Like it kind of comes back down to the frequency with which you do sport. So like one of the things that I rate about functional patterns and like coordination based training is that a lot of the time people in their day-to-day life are not doing enough coordination training and actually aren't doing that much sport, so they're not really getting a coordination stimulus from that side of things as well. Like if you think about a ridiculously high level athlete that is playing their sport every single day they're getting some form of like speed stimulus, coordination stimulus, power stimulus. What they're lacking is kind of like the poles around increasing maximum strength and increasing so realistically for them they don't necessarily need to do additional coordination work, but the second you've got someone who's training for their sport twice a week, like they're seeing a massive drop in the amount of speed work, power work, coordination work they're getting. If you're doing the same program for them as you would for an elite level athlete in terms of the strength work, the ratios are going to be way off. So like if you look at someone like Usain Bolt, he doesn't necessarily need to do a load of coordination stuff that's built around gait cycle stuff, because his entire training for his sport is him sprinting and doing gait cycle work. So him doing more gait cycle stuff in a strength and conditioning environment doesn't make sense, whereas him doing stuff that maximizes strength, maximizes speed, like, and maintains robustness is the stuff that's going to benefit the most. But yeah.
I mean, and once you're an Olympian, you're not thinking about what's going to be good for your health. You're thinking about what wins the gold medal.
Well, I mean, we're also talking about a guy who basically spent his entire time doing leg extensions and eating chicken nuggets outside of his sprint training. So, like,
can you believe the guy is so athletic? So, like, I don't want to say he's genetically gifted, because I don't know if I believe anyone's that much genetically like blessed compared to someone else. But like,
he
got away with a lot, didn't he?
He's
we
definitely
were having a
genetically.
conversation the other day around like athletes that are definitely juicing, and someone was like, Usain Bolt had to be juicing, there's no one that's like as good as him. And it's like, yeah, but if you look at him, like, he is genetically completely different to most other sprinters. There aren't many sprinters who are as tall as him, can have as long a stride as him as a result, and haven't had injuries over the course of their entire career. Like, he basically went the whole of his career without getting injured. As a result, like, his top speed reached the point.
Doesn't that make you think he might have had a little bit of like Mexican supplements for that?
I don't know. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's just he could have done, but he could also just be that one example of someone who actually managed load effectively the whole way through his career, and as a result.
Yeah, I mean, Usain Bolt, funnily enough, that we're talking about him, because he is one of the only elite athletes that I would bet my house that he wasn't and hasn't.
Interesting. To be fair, nearly everyone else in the top 10 for sprinting has been popped, and he hasn't been popped, which there's an argument where you could say, well, then surely he was doping. But the fact that they popped everyone else shows they were testing properly. Like, it's not like they're afraid to pop people
I mean,
in that position. Like, they would pop him if they could.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest argument for him being genetically gifted is the fact that ever since he started sprinting, he was better than everyone else.
Yeah.
Like, all of the athletes where I'm like, yeah, you're definitely on something, have all kind of been sub-level, and then just gone, elite. World champion. Like, I'm not going to name drop, but there are some distance runners who are from the UK. There are some cyclists in the UK who have made it to the elite and were shit up until they were like 29, and then all of a sudden won a world title. And you're like, I'm not. You know, and then there's other sports like rugby has a real problem with like amateur level doesn't test. Yeah. Same with weightlifting, and once you get that muscle mass and you get that power from the dopings.
Speaking about this, like, obviously, what are your thoughts on like the kind of Super Olympics idea, the whole idea around doing?
So I really liked it until I had the conversation with you the other day, where you made a very good point that it is just going to stop natural athletes being able to make as much money, because like most athletes make pennies anyway. Yeah. So it's like, you know, realistically, if you put the Olympics on and the Super Olympics at the same time, I know I'm going to watch the Super Olympics. I think we all want to see what the people who are like at maximal are going to do, because humans naturally want to see the fastest, the biggest, the strongest. It's just what we like. So I love the idea of just letting people go loose, because I want to see what happens. And I want to know, and I want to see the research, you know. If you can start, like, produce more research into the world of enhancement and start making it safe and easily available, because then what happens, like, if you're 80 and you're really suffering from sarcopenia, and we can just give you the body of, like, 40-year-old back. Like, that's amazing. That's, like, a beautiful thing, because if you could just imagine, like, even if we died at the same age, if you could live in the body of a 25-year-old till you're 80,
Yeah.
You've been given an extra lifetime. Because for the average person, like if you train, I like to think I'm going to be functional when I'm like 60, 70. My granddad's trained like 4 times a week his whole entire life, and it's taken his heart like exploding to stop him. Like that was, and it's like only been the last year. He's 87, 88.
Yeah.
So I think, if you can give someone a young body, amazing. And I love the fact that it pushes into that, and I want to see people do some nutty shit.
Yeah.
When you pointed out that it is going to take away loads from natural people, I was like,
It's the two sides of that as well, right? So it's the fact it takes away from the natural sport because no one's watching the natural sport anymore. But then it's also like, okay, well, if you're 13 years old, 12 years old, and you're thinking about getting into the world of sport, you're like, okay, right, well, the world of sport is entirely made up of drug users now.
Yeah.
So I have to start, when do people start thinking about, okay, right, well, now I need to start taking steroids in order to make sure that I can compete? Yeah. Once you've got like 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 10-year-olds taking steroids in order to compete at that level, it's like, okay, well...
Yeah, and we're obsessed in just general in the world with always doing more. Companies are always trying to make more money year on year on year on year on year. And people are trying to break world records year on year on year on year on year. If you add steroids, like freely available that everyone can use and everyone can just do, I know they're being used, but they're probably being used sparingly at the high levels. And you kind of go, right, we've now got these steroids, all these world records have fallen. How are we going to go beyond that? And that's where, in my mind, it gets a bit dangerous.
Yeah.
Because we know, like, you look at pro bodybuilders, they have a lifespan of 60.
Yeah.
Because they use so much gear that their hearts usually explode. And like BMI, despite the fact that it's a shit metric, is actually a relatively decent measure of health because it's about the pressure that your organs and your joints are under all the time.
Yeah.
So if everyone's just got shitloads of muscle mass and is doing ridiculous things.
It's also the whole thing of the amount of strain that you're then putting on your body in each of your sessions.
Yeah.
Like if you're in a position where like you push yourself relatively hard, but then you have to rest for 72 hours because your body is fucked.
Yeah.
And then you go again. Whereas if you're then just in a position where you can just push yourself that hard every single day, twice a day,
and recover,
the amount of strain that you're going to put on your body is just going to be insane.
Yeah. And like, I mean, if everyone starts doing that, we're not even talking about the fact that like you're probably going to see cancer levels go through the roof as well, given the fact that anything that's anabolic encourages that.
Yeah. It's a weird one that people are kind of it's very normalized to do steroids in the gym community, and I find this, so I'm a big believer in like cognitive liberty, and I think all drugs should be legalized. If you want to take whatever you want to take, go ahead, like that's your business. But a lot of people have problems with psychedelics, a lot of people have problems with any drug that could be like psychoactive, but roid rage is a massive thing, and it's just completely normalized. Like it is a mind altering substance. If you just go into psychotic rage sometimes because of a substance, that's a mind altering substance. And I would rather people are getting stoned and just getting the munchies when they have a mind altering substance than people are getting like murderously angry.
Yeah. It's that whole thing as well of like what happens. So there's two sides to that in terms of like people who take steroids talk about the fact that it puts them in this elevated state and it makes them feel great all the time. So then when they come off of it, the chances are they're going to go into a state where they're feeling quite low or feeling quite flat or feeling quite depressed. But the other side of it is like human beings are the sum of all of their actions and all of their behaviors. So if you are living your life in a completely like in an unassisted way, like every decision you make is a decision that you have made consciously based on like just normal levels of hormones circulating within your body. And the second you start taking something that makes you more impulsive on a day-to-day basis, gives you a higher sex drive, makes you more aggressive, the actions you take are going to be aligned with that. Yeah. So then all of a sudden you start crossing lines that you wouldn't have crossed normally. But then that changes you because you've crossed that line before, you've got away with it, and you continue to cross it, you'll cross it again. And once you've crossed a line, it's just easier to cross. So even if you then come off that substance, you're more likely to cross that line again.
Yeah. I mean, do you know who Dr. Mike is from like RP?
Dr. Mike Israel.
Yeah. Like he's probably like one of the only people on Instagram who actually openly talks about the shit side of steroids. He's like, I do it, but like, fuck me, it's rough. Like he had like an interview where he was like, dude, man, when I'm in a comp prep, like I live in like this idyllic place in like the Rockies in America. I got this lake and I know that it makes me really happy. When I'm in prep and I'm on like tren, I go out and I'm like, I know I should find this nice, but I fucking hate it, and the world is shit, and everything's awful, and I just like have to keep telling him I'm just getting through this.
Yeah.
And like he talks really openly. He's like, it's awful. It's awful being on these substances. Your brain is fucking weird. You're angry all the time. You hate the world. You're depressed, and then you get through the prep and you come off and you're like, Jesus Christ, whoa.
I've had like 2 friends who were on steroids that have taken their lives like as a result. Like, and I don't want to say as a result because they may well have done the same thing if they hadn't been on been using that substance. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to know the impact that had. And like, it's one of those things that I always think it's quite an important thing to discuss. So I'm glad there are people like Dr. Mike talking about it, because it is like, you know.
Well, it's like, it's one thing to be like, I'm on steroids and I'm open about the fact that I'm on steroids and everyone knows, so whatever. And that's not me saying I'm on steroids. I'm just like,
no, as much as you want to.
I can genuinely say that I've never.
Matt has the highest testosterone levels on the planet. That's why he's that bold and that hairy.
So it's possible. It's possible. But it's one thing to be open about, and it's another thing to be open about all sides of it.
Yeah.
And I think there's not enough people who are actually like open about it. They're open about it in person, but they don't talk about it on social media. So when people see them, they're like, "Oh, you're that jacked, so I'm going to buy a program off you because you're that jacked." Despite the fact that I don't know what you actually do. Despite that you talk to people about it, and you're like, "I'm really open about it," and you're like, "But you never say it anywhere." And then there's another one of like, even when people are open about it, they're not open about all of the effects of it and the fact that like being on it can make your tendons really fucking brittle, and like the amount of people I know that have been on steroids and they've all like torn their quad or busted their Achilles or snapped their pec, or you know,
that kind of
something
it all
like
comes
that.
back to the same thing to what we were saying before, though, in terms of that whole thing of understanding how different parts of the system develop. And like, muscles will develop really quickly, and you can load quite regularly, and you can expose to relatively high loads, whereas connective tissue you can't. So the second that you've got someone who's on juice who can load their muscles even more, get even more mechanical tension, develop even more hypertrophy, the imbalance between the double bicep pop is still the one.
Have you seen the one where someone's chest just comes off?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're on steroids, but like, if your chest pulls itself off the bone, you're probably doing.
I mean, it's a bad sign. You're doing something wrong.
Something's not right with your training, and that's the thing. Either your training is really bad, or you're doing something that you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that both of you guys have had, because I don't think I know anyone that's juiced, or at least I've not known anyone like close to me where I've ever had like an open discussion with them about it.
I still remember coming to the first Coach Collective session and like I hung around. Matt had obviously organised the Coach Collective, which was like the group of self-selected elite. When you sent that text out and it was like, "Oh, if you think you're an elite coach, please come along to this meeting to discuss things with other elite coaches," and I was like, I mean, I kind of have to put myself in that category because of the fact I want to be around those people. But it feels really fucking weird to opt in.
Yeah.
But then sticking around for like 30 minutes at the end of that session, and everyone's just there like, "Oh yeah, so that last course of steroids I did was like," and it was like that was a weird. Every gym owner is like, "Oh yeah, no, like I didn't really think I'd take steroids, and then I started taking steroids, and they're awesome." And it's like,
you're like, "Okay, man, okay,
cool."
I mean, I guess it happens. It's a weird one though. Like, people don't talk about the mental side of them enough. That's the thing. It's like, I'm kind of like, look, if you want to soup up your body, I get it. Like, when I found out that you could have muscle cellular division on some cycles, like that was like, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that was enough for me to be like, because it's like if you can get muscle cellular division, it's just like putting a bigger engine in your car. You've permanently upgraded this like output, and that's a really tempting thing. But then you start thinking, like, say, well, the average age of bodybuilders is like 60 because it doesn't do good things for your heart. The mental side of it is like, you're not going to be as good a partner for your like significant other if you have one, or even just your friends. It's like there's so many of these things that people don't consider as part of that decision, which it is. And it's something, and if we spoke about steroids, how we talk about any other drug, those would come into the discussion. And I think a lot of people would probably make different decisions around them.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got one client who said he did them when he was younger. It was like 18 to 21. And he's like, I can't believe I did it. And he like loves training now. He's super jacked, super strong. But I remember chatting to him. He's like, mate, I've been trying to get my testosterone back to normal levels for so long now. And he's like, and he was told by the people who did it, oh yeah, you can just get it back.
Yeah.
So, and you know, when you're 21, you don't think about what am I going to think when I'm 45 and want to be able to like comfortably look after my kids on a 2-week camping trip when I can't get to a doctor.
And
all of those
can you even have kids?
It's all of those decisions made in a time in your life when you are like actually relatively fragile. So like mentally, like you have no like there's no basis in you, or that you've got no life experience that tells you, oh, this is where I'm good, this is where I'm successful. And you start making progress in that gym environment. You're like, oh, right, I'm making progress in this gym environment. People are noticing that I'm making progress in this gym environment. I want to carry on, I want to carry on, I want to carry on. The people that then take that next step and go, okay, I'm going to start using steroids. It comes from this place of like, oh, well, I've reached the pinnacle of what I could do naturally, so I need to like keep on pushing because this is the thing that gives me validity.
Yeah.
And like realistically, if you take it back and you go, I got into this because of the fact I wanted to be a better person, I wanted to be healthier, I wanted to be fitter, I wanted to be able to do more things, and now I'm taking this next step, which kind of takes that all away from you. Like it's like, okay, right, so it's less healthy. It's leading to me becoming a little bit obsessive. It's showing that I'm actually obsessive about the way that I look, and like what's it giving me?
Yeah, and even then, mate, like you say, people do it between the ages of like 19 to 22, and I'm like, why the fuck are you doing it?
Your test level's already
You've
ridiculous.
got young, robust fucking bodies and joints. Like, I would kill to be like, I say this to Aaron all the time when he's like complaining about where his strict press is out or his squats. I'm like, dude, if I was fucking strict pressing and squatting what you're strict pressing and squatting now, at your age, I would be an absolute monster now.
Mate, I did a session with Gus's son today.
Yeah.
Like, so Gus is one of the other PTs, you might know him, like from he's Geeta's partner.
I know.
But yeah, his son's like 15 years old, plays basketball, turned up today, like was doing shadowing, and he was supposed to shadow me for a PT session. Yeah. But my PT session cancelled, so I was like, oh, let's just go through do a little session. When I was 15, 16 years old, I couldn't bench a barbell. I was that weak. I literally I started doing strength conditioning with like a couple of really decent strength conditioning coaches at the college I was at. But I had to start with one of those rubber 6 kilo bars. Yeah. And I'm getting this kid and he's doing like 15 kilo dumbbells for like
reps.
That's strong.
For bicep curls.
Fuck me.
And it's just like, okay, so your bicep curl, it's doing like bicep curl to Arnie press with 15 kilo dumbbells for sets of 12 reps. And I'm like, right. Yeah, no, when I was your age, I literally I had a couple of like 1.5 kilo dumbbells at home that my mum had, and I was doing bicep curls with those, but that was as far as I went. You're doing 10 times that.
Oh mate. Yeah. Genuinely, I don't think like that younger generation realise what they have in terms of like the knowledge of fitness and training.
Oh my God, it's so
like the facilities as well.
The facility, like fuck's sake, when I was young, the only gym I had around me was a fucking YMCA that I had to go to with like someone who was a lot older than me who didn't really know what they were doing because like PT wasn't really a thing back then, and he was just like, yeah, just do some bicep curls and like I do this and I do that, and I'm just there like 16, not quite fucking. I went to uni at 19 and I hadn't ever put a bar on my back. Wow. I'd never squatted.
And now look at you.
But mate,
now you can front rack dip 170 kilos, but you can't walk it back in.
I can't walk it back in.
No, because
that would be too much effort.
It's embarrassing, really.
But
on that note, we are going to have to leave it because of the fact you need to dash off. I mean, it's getting close to it. I think we've been going for like an hour and 5 minutes.
Let me check my calendar and I'll see if I can push longer. Do you know? No, let's go to 5. If you want to keep going.
My mum's coming over at 5 because I'm
we
a good
can meet
son.
Sal's mum.
Yeah. You can meet you guys can meet my mum. That'll be fine. It'll be great. I'm sure she'll. I mean, she'll love you.
Sick.
Oh, okay.
Not you.
Sweet.
I've said too many bad things about you, Matt.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. So I obviously I'm a little bit younger than you guys. Not that much younger. It's only like 5 years, but.
How old are you now?
I'm 25.
Yeah, I'm 33.
Yeah, I'm 30.
Yeah,
5 years.
5 years.
Do you know what? The transition between like 21 to 25, oh my God, you get so much stronger. Like to any young people who are like worried they're not strong enough, it's like weird. Like it was like kind of this, like I got to 23 and I was like, oh, this is when people say like man strength starts kicking in. I was like, this is really weird. You just get stronger.
I think there's the other side of it as well, where you actually start realizing the things that you weren't doing with your training. So like when I first started training, everything was about bodybuilding because like I'd been told by my coaches that I wasn't big enough. So I was like, okay, right, how do I get bigger? Oh, there's this book where I can read about bodybuilding and I can build bigger biceps and I can get like, and it was like, okay, cool, I'll just go down that route. And then I just spent my entire time trying to get bigger and I was like, why am I not getting more powerful? And then I started like learning about plyometrics. But instead of taking the bodybuilding stuff out, I was like, okay, cool, I'll just add in plyometrics over the top. And then all of a sudden I'm like training in the morning for like 2 hours. I'd go in, I'd go for a swim, I'd do all of my like bodybuilding session, and then I'd go home, come back in later, play basketball for 2 hours, and then go to the gym and do like my plot. And it was like, okay, right, I am massively overloaded. Like, luckily, I'm like under the age of 21, so I'm coping.
You're
but
so robust. This is what I mean. I mean, like, what do you squat now?
200.
200. What do you deadlift?
270.
270. What do you bench?
Oh, it doesn't exist.
Doesn't
Sam
exist.
is-
Like
Sam is
maybe
basically
100
obese.
kilos.
What do you
Maybe.
what do you dip?
I've done 85 on a weighted dip.
Yeah.
How ridiculous is that?
85 is ridiculous.
People
And-
are doing
but
200 now though.
I
It's
know.
like not even, it doesn't even count in the scheme of weighted calories.
Yeah, but your dips actually look like dips, whereas weighted
Yeah.
Cali dips don't necessarily look
Yeah,
like
yeah.
dips.
Sure.
But
Not
anyway.
to critique Cali guys on form, but
let's not get into that. That's a whole different conversation. But anyway, my point is, when I was 25, like I could squat 120. I deadlifted maybe 150 maximum, and like, but we won't even talk about my bench. But I could probably dip maybe like body weight plus 10.
Yeah.
Right when I was 25. That was me at 25, and like now, like the progress from 25 to 30. But like you say, like the progress that you've made from like 20 to 25.
Yeah, it's
Like
I hope that
I
happens
know you're
again.
talking about being like in the 0.5%, but mate, honestly, you've built that base. The sky's the limit. By the time you're 30, like people like to say that your body drops off after 30. Like I'm the best I've ever been,
Yeah.
because if anything, having that fucking 10 years of lifting and exposing my joints and my bones and everything to progressive, it just means that you're robust enough to just fucking do it and keep doing it and keep getting stronger. And there's really no limit
I hope
to
so. I like that.
what you can get.
I hope so.
Like genuinely, I mean, look at Zab. Look at what he's doing at 33.
That's the elder of the group.
such a prick. The weakest of the three of us. But I am way above that 6 kilo bench press I started on, so I'll take that.
There you
and
go.
you
There
outbench
you go.
me for sure by like a fair margin.
Yeah, but you outdip me.
I do, but
You do.
not if we count total weight, because you are also like 30 kilos heavier than me.
That's true. That's true. All right, fine. I'll take
Yeah,
it.
I'm like a nice
Thanks,
70
Steve.
kilo man. I'm like the most average weighted man in the world.
So you are. Yeah, I mean that's bang on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For my height, I'm like real heavy, but for just a general human being, it's pretty normal.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure all three of us are like obese on BMI, right?
Yeah. I do worry about my heart a little bit, to be fair, because like my heart rate is always like a lot higher than it should be, and I don't know if it's stress, caffeine, or just because I'm small and have a lot of muscle mass. But I'm like,
All three?
I think it's probably all three. But sometimes I'm like, I really don't think my heart rate should be this, considering how good my cardio is.
How high is your heart rate?
I reckon it sits at like average at like 80 beats a minute.
Okay.
But considering how fit I am, it really shouldn't sit there.
Right.
that means you've got vagal tone still. So
Yeah.
like that like anything up to 100 beats per minute is supposedly like
Okay.
around like actually having vagal tone. The removal of vagal tone takes you to 100 beats a minute. And then anything above 100 beats a minute is about like your sympathetic nervous system coming into play.
Yeah.
Not to go really boring, because this conversation has actually been really fun and really interesting so far. But like, yeah, if you see like your heart rate eking up towards 100,
Yeah.
then that's when things start to get quite worrying, and that's when people start to like medically people will get worried if your
Yeah.
heart rate's 100 beats a minute.
For a while, I used to check my blood pressure, because I know what your guys' PT course was like, but for mine, you had to like take blood pressure and stuff, which I have no idea why, because I don't know what any of it means. It's like, but I knew what was good and bad, and I would like hyper obsessively take my blood pressure, and then like worry it was too high, take it again, and it would have gone up. I'd
Right.
worry some more, I'd take it again.
I swear, I just compete with myself to get the highest score possible. Like, every single time, I've got really bad like white coat syndrome, so if I get my blood pressure taken, it takes at least 6 to like attempts and 6 readings for it to drop down to normal.
Oh god.
But like the
I
first
can't
one,
do it.
I hit 180 the other day in terms
Oh,
of my
wow.
systolic. I was like,
Nice.
No. Nice. Healthy.
That's like you should stop exercising right away type
Yeah.
levels. So yeah.
I mean, I've got a real weird thing that I still have with like this part of my arm in terms of like, I mean, I told you that like when I had my appendix out, they like tried to take blood. I didn't realize that I had some like repressed childhood shit where like this nurse had tried to take blood and done it 8 times and not been able to get anything, and I ran away and like locked myself in a toilet. And so, yeah. And my mum told me all of this after the fact, after
Yeah.
I'd had like a full-blown panic attack when someone tried to take my blood.
Okay, interesting.
And like I've passed out a few times just like thinking about that area is weird. So then whenever they were trying to like put like pressure cuffs on me, I can feel it in there, and I'm like,
it's horrible though, isn't it? It does feel like something bad is happening to your body.
But you're just like every single time you're like, this thing isn't going to stop inflating.
Yeah, it's gonna keep
it gets harder and harder, and you're like, it's not stopped. Why is it not stopped? Why is it not? And then it's it's the most stressful experience ever.
It really is.
Yeah. It is.
I don't like knowing what's happening inside my body. I kind of don't feel like you're meant to know. And I know like we live in the modern world and it's okay, we can find out safely. But a little bit of me is like, I don't need to know.
Yeah.
I'd rather not know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some
Like there are metrics that I'm like, do you know what? I'll wear like a little wrist strap that tells me what my heart rate is and tells me how many steps I've done and tells me all of those things. And maybe I'll track my calories every now and again. But like there are things where I'm like, yeah.
I don't need to know my heart rate variability. I don't need to know that you think I'm not recovered. Like, I'll know. I have a magic thing called my nervous system. It will tell me if I'm not.
I'll try and do something ridiculous. It won't happen. I'll be like, okay, cool. Maybe I need a rest.
Yeah. Honestly, like, I don't know what your opinion is. I don't get the whoop strap hype. I kind of get tracking your heart rate. I didn't used to get it. And the more time I spent coaching different people, the more I thought that I'm like, okay, this clearly actually has use in certain scenarios. But the people who are like, Whoop says I'm not recovered, guys, I'm not going to go to the gym. I'm like, you bitch.
Mate,
the thing that gets to me, you go.
All I was going to say is it comes back to your point about, do you want to be in the top 1%, top 0.5%?
Yeah.
Like, the only time you need heart rate variability to tell you whether or not you are or aren't like recovered enough, usually, is like when you're looking for that extra 5% of what you can do.
But equally, like the other side of it is knowing your heart rate variability and knowing how recovered you are is a useful metric, but letting it govern how you train isn't. Like, because there are going to be times where actually part of your programming is that you're trying to shock yourself. You're actually trying to train under fatigue to create a bigger stimulus. So it's like that whole thing of like stimulus is a summative, right? So like, bless you.
Sorry, thank you.
It's all right.
That like really built up. I was trying to hold it in.
Sam's allergic to whoop straps.
Whoop straps got mentioned. And I'm like, no.
It's that whole thing of like, if you look at like charts, if you look at like the way that some people will program, they'll go through like shock blocks. They'll stack training sessions to create a double stimulus. So they'll go, okay, right. In order to create a bigger super compensation effect, I need to like create a bigger dip. That first session I could only get this far, so I'll do another session to get a little bit lower, and that's going to lead to a bigger rise in performance. So like actually being told by your whoop strap that you're not fully recovered might not mean that you shouldn't train. It just depends on what your coach has tried to program for you.
Yeah.
It also completely violates a lot of the data that heart rate variability was like validated on. So like the way you're supposed to do it is you're supposed to take it once in the morning under neutral conditions, i.e. lie down, pre-caffeine, like no alcohol the night before. Like it's supposed to be in a dark room, you sit there for a minute, 2 minutes is optimal.
Yeah.
And you take it and you look at that reading, and then you look at that reading every day. Yeah. And then you start to build a picture of where your heart rate variability usually is, and then you get an idea of like
that is how the whoop strap works, right? In the sense of it monitors you overnight. It takes one measurement in the morning when you wake up, so when you are fully rested.
Yeah, but then it keeps tracking it through the day as well.
It tracks it throughout the day, but it still only takes like one measure. Like if you actually look at the graph, it's only taking that one measure, and it's also like it will take like 2 weeks. My Garmin does the HRV thing. It tells me my level of stress and tells me my level of fatigue. But it's like done over like the first 2 weeks. It doesn't tell me anything about where I'm at in terms of fatigue because of the fact it's getting a baseline for me. Yeah. And then after 2 weeks, it goes, okay, this is where you're at. This is what you're fatigue like. And so
there's also like you're supposed to be there, put the thing on, and then take the thing off, and like not have it as opposed. Like,
but like part of the reason they do that is because of the fact that most people aren't waking up, putting it on straight away. So like you sit in the dark room because you're trying to get back to that like, oh, I've just woken up. Yeah.
I mean, I also think there's like a measurement bias in that, like just wearing a whoop strap and sleeping with it. Like personally, I couldn't sleep with a whoop strap on. Like I can't even sleep with a watch on.
I mean, I would find it stressful. Yeah. Like I always find the whole thing. But like then it's the same thing as you remember that Game Changers documentary when they were talking about the fact that like the person had slept, like they'd eaten a meal and then they measured the circumference of a certain thing. They measured the circumference of their erection and the hardness of their erection, and it was like based on whether or not you'd eaten a vegan meal or whether you'd eaten
if you have more salt, it's
meat-based
better.
meal. if you had the meat-based meal, you ended up with a smaller erection,
Really?
and a less long-lasting erection. But like they did the vegan meal as the second meal, so it's like you put this thing on my penis and made me go to sleep with this thing you'd be like, yeah, we're gonna measure your erection overnight. And it's like first night you're there like, okay, cool, well I'm not sleeping, and like of course it's gonna be, your body's under a state of stress, it's not gonna like, and then the second night it was like, okay, now you're gonna have a vegan meal, let's see what happens. And it's like, well,
it's pretty poor study principle.
There's no ABBA mechanism to it. It's not like right.
Best explanation of like scientific study.
I love the idea that like after that documentary, there's at least 1,000 blokes have gone, I'm gonna go buy some broccoli.
I'm like the number of guys that literally use that as their reason for explaining why they've gone vegan to me after that documentary. I was like guys,
please,
just watch this debunk video quickly first.
I mean, mate, there's some wild literature out there. Like I remember going to a hypertrophy seminar once, and they did a study, and this is to this day, I'm like, I wish I'd been part of this study. Why wasn't I part of this study? They basically had a bunch of guys. They did like some strength training with them. They did 2 groups. One watched porn before they trained, didn't masturbate, and then another one watched porn and jacked off and then trained.
Yeah.
And they were like, nice. Oh, these guys that like watched porn but didn't jack off, like gained more muscle across a fucking 6-week block.
There's no way.
But I mean, the thing is, you think about it, like think about how you feel after you've
you're not going to go slam
You're
it
not
hard
like,
in the gym.
right, I want to go fucking lift some weight.
It's that whole thing around like that conversation.
That's what you're into.
We can kind of circle back onto fighting from here. So there's that whole world of like the world of fighting where they're like, okay, well, if I'm in a fight camp, I don't have sex and I don't wank.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's naturally going to lower my testosterone levels. But it's like, no, it lowers your testosterone levels instantly after.
Yeah.
But like actually like.
And then you're all right 2 hours later.
Yeah.
living a relatively healthy life where you're satisfying certain needs is probably not going to be that bad for you from a hormone balance perspective.
If anything, it probably boosts your testosterone.
It's probably way better for you.
Yeah. Like, genuinely, like, I mean, like I said, the study was a joke.
Yeah.
Like, but it was an actual study. But again, it's a joke in the sense of, like, if I've just done that, I'm not going to want to go and fucking lift more weight in the gym. I'm probably going to lift less weight because I'm, like, a bit tired, a bit like, well, fuck, I can't be
and
arsed.
also, you've just had a wank for a bunch of scientists. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you are going to be in a bit of a weird mood. But yeah, how was it? It was good. It was good. Yeah.
That's right.
Here's a cup to prove you actually did it.
Yeah, like, and then you've got to get your blood taken, I assume, to test your testosterone or something.
Probably.
God.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is the thing is when there's all these like research papers, like you said, about the studies of the person whose name we won't name because we're on a public forum, or you can name him if you want to.
I'll just call him Big Bad Brad.
Big Bad Brad. So you're talking about Big Bad Brad's studies, and like there's so many of like just studies in general where you look at it and you go, that's not fucking applicable in any way, shape, or form to the real world.
It's the number of times where it's like it's not applicable. It's comparing the wrong things. It's not actually got an adequate control group. It's using the wrong participants, and it's like
they never control the variables. Sports science is actually a joke.
Sports science is broad. Like I think there's like the whole thing. If you look at physiology-based research, like quite often physiology-based research is really good, but like that's because of the fact it's based on biology.
Yeah.
Like it comes from a more like scientific world, whereas like the stuff that's more applied and is more like, oh, how many sets should you do in order to max, or like which exercise is better, or like all of those sorts of things. It's like, yeah, but you're not really like thinking about how that's going to work within the real world when I've actually programmed that exercise.
Well, yeah, this is like. Because I did a lot at uni. I've done engineering, chemistry, then biology. Didn't finish any of it. Dropped out a week before my final exams. But I spent a lot of time reading like quite hard science papers, biology being by far the softest. It's amazing how soft biology is science-wise compared to like chemistry or engineering. The like rigor they put into stuff is stupid.
But it's like the absolutism, right? Like the second you go into that world of like engineering, anything mathsy, anything chemistry based, like both of those have like quite absolute answers. Yeah. Like there is like a this thing exists or doesn't exist. This answer is true or isn't true. Whereas
but
like,
also,
the second you move into biology, it's like
getting it wrong is the difference between something exploding and something not exploding.
This is a big
so there has to be that extra
serious
level of rigor.
Coming from that background, then like when I read a sports science, like a lot of the time I'll look at it and I'm like, well, I'm immediately going to ignore this because it like doesn't make sense as a science paper. Like there's some stuff where you can study it well. Like if you were to look up, you know, what happens if we reduce calories in groups, and you could give them the exact same meal and you could get a really widespread sample size and you could very comfortably get an answer, assuming you were keeping them in one building and you knew they weren't sneaking food.
Yep.
Like, that's doable. But then when you have studies where they're like, what builds more muscle, a leg extension or a squat? And you're like, well, there's so many variables on here which are quite literally impossible to control. You don't have a scientific study. Like, it's not a useful piece of information. You've just done a load of work. You've done some statistics on it, which are all invalid. Yeah. And then because most people don't have a hard science background, they believe it. And I think this is a problem with why a lot of sports scientists make bad studies, is because they've never been forced to make a good study because no one challenges them.
But it's also the whole thing of they're looking for the answers that people want, or they're looking to answer questions that people want them to answer, rather than answering the questions we actually need to know the answers to. So like, it's like, oh, which of these two exercises is better? Which number of, like, how many sets should I do? What rep scheme should I use? Rather than like, what happens if I increase reps from this to this? What happens if I, you know, all of those questions which are more valid. And the thing that kind of like, the one that got me recently and made me realize like the most important thing for people to learn is that they should just read research papers and in full, not just the conclusions, not just the abstracts, like actually properly read it and try and come to their own conclusions rather than the conclusion that's given to them. And it was like recently this study came out that was talking about supersets, and it was saying that, and it's basically proving that supersets are useful because of the fact they're time efficient. Yeah. Which makes complete logical sense, right?
Probably didn't need a study for that.
But it's like everyone's now talking about that study. Like 5-10 years ago, the exact same study got done and proved that supersets were useless because there was no additional benefit when you had volume matched across two groups, when one person did it as supersets and the other person did it. And it's the same study, same participants, same findings, but one study was like supersets are useless. The other studies, supersets are really effective because they're really time efficient. It's like if you'd read both studies, you would have had the answer that we've just come to, or the conclusion we've just drawn, on your own, because you would have read the original study and gone, oh yeah, like there's no additional benefit, but I would have got it done faster. Yeah. So I'm going to carry on using supersets rather than just going through this like 5-10 year period where people have been like, oh, we shouldn't do supersets anymore.
Yeah, I also think part of the problem is recognizing that even in like the sports science community, that randomized control trials or individual studies are considered to be the lowest level of evidence and not proof that a thing actually exists. And you have to get all the way up to meta-analyses, and I think there's even one above that now where they take multiple meta-analyses and then look at and like that's the level at which you should be looking at them, because on their own individually they're just garbage. Like it's like, what's the answer to this tiny little fractional question? And then when you look at them, like you shouldn't just accept the findings, but you should look at them and go, right, the variability of evidence here is like there's a 5% chance it's wrong, right? That's the first thing. For anything to be statistically significant, there's a 5% chance that it's wrong because it's not medical. They don't have to work to 99%. Yeah. Right? And then you've got the added conflation of like the effect size doesn't even matter if it's significant. Yeah. That's apparently enough. And so a lot of them don't report effect sizes. So you have no idea how relevant this is in the real world, because it might be like, oh, the leg extension is significantly more effective for building muscle than a squat because P equaled 0.095 for the statistical analysis they ran. But the effect size was like 0.1, which meant that you gained a gram more muscle from doing leg extensions. And they don't even talk about the fact that you might not get as much strength in your legs, or you might not get the subsequent core stimulus or hamstring activation at the bottom or anything like that.
But it's the whole thing around like how that all fits together in terms of a long-term plan. It's like, okay, right, so maybe I want to do leg extensions to build more muscle, but then I need to do this to build more strength, and then that cycles through and all of it feeds back and feeds forward. But the thing, like you just said about the fact that RCTs are kind of viewed as like the lowest grade studies, and then the meta-analyses are viewed as the highest grade studies. It's kind of the same thing as like when we had the massive collapse in 2008 of like, everyone was looking at things at this like ridiculously high level and not really realizing that all of these like subprime bonds were being sold everywhere. And it's the same principle. If you get a meta-analysis that is looking at a load of shit studies, and it's like, oh yeah, look at this data that we've like established across all of these like really badly designed studies that show this one pattern. It's like, yeah, but you're still looking at poorly designed studies. Yeah. So like I could find this thing within a meta-analysis, but it doesn't actually mean anything if the studies didn't make sense.
Yeah. But usually I think you can spot that in a meta-analysis when like they're saying, you know,
I
the
don't
confidence interval is like here because there's like 30 studies saying this, and there's 30 studies saying this.
What you've just said is like, okay, right, we need to look at meta-analyses. And like other people are going to go, okay, yeah, we'll look at meta-analyses. I read like 2 review articles recently because of the fact someone was telling me that I had to read them because they proved that I was wrong on something. And I was like, okay, cool, right.
I bet there's someone on Instagram.
That's the way to trigger Zab's like alter ego, his super autism.
If I'm in a debate with somebody, I don't think many people can read research papers as fast as I can when I have a point to prove or I'm being told how wrong I am. And it's like, but I read through these studies, I read through these research and these review articles, and like all of the studies they were citing, I was like, okay, cool, I'll read through those. Oh, yeah, so they're all shit. But like within the paper, it looked like they were well-designed studies. It was described as a well-designed study. It was, you know, the conclusions being drawn were reasonable based on the outcomes and based on the confidence limits and based on all of that. But actually, like you break it down, you go one step further, and you're like, okay, but you're looking at the patterns that are taking place within a beginner level athlete, someone just starting out their fitness journey, and you're trying to extrapolate that across to people who are elite level athletes, and you're saying that the same outcomes are going to happen in both cases, and it's like, well, that's just dumb. Yeah. but that's the problem, and that's like fundamentally why like I have such a massive issue with like the way the fitness industry or the way that strength conditioning research is done now. But like also when you see people say, oh, I'm a research driven personal trainer, it's like, you're a research driven personal trainer, but how far have you actually looked into the research?
Most, like, not in a horrible way to most personal trainers, most personal trainers do not have the educational background to actually read a scientific paper properly. I barely have the educational background, and I've done 5 years of like hard sciences. I sometimes read science papers. I'm like, I don't have a fucking clue what you are saying, and I should, but I don't know. And it's like, I know 99% of PTs who say they're evidence-based don't have a clue. They don't know what a confidence interval is. They don't know what a chi-square test is.
Yep.
They don't know what a linear regression is. They don't know what these things are. They read it, they see a conclusion, they assume that's being evidence-based. But I mean, we're in a state of science where doing science at uni made me not trust science. Because one, you realise, oh, okay, well, it's actually just a bunch of information. You've got to pick the one you believe. Most of these science research papers are funded by things that have an active interest in finding something.
Yep.
And then what they're finding with AI now, because I've said this for a long time, I was like, there's no way anyone who peer reviews a paper is checking all the things they've cited and then checking all the things that those papers have cited. And now with AI, they're going, a lot of papers are wrong because the AI can check them all. And of course, humans make errors as they go along. So a lot of science we're sitting on now is built on like kind of pseudo-y science of errors of misinterpreting things or on top of things that have been misinterpreted. And it works, but in 1,000 years' time, is it going to work? Probably not.
Well, it's when you read research papers and they've cited studies that are written in like 6 different languages. And it's like, so you've not cited the like translated version, which you could probably, like, there is no way that you as an author are capable of understanding all of those languages. Yeah. Like, I mean, there is, but it's really, really, really unlikely that you speak Mandarin and Italian, and Spanish, and like Lithuanian, and all of these other like, it drives me insane. Like, I love science. I think science is the way forward. I think that we should like engage with science as much as possible. You should read as much literature as you can. Yeah. Obviously, I think that because of the fact I'm a little geek. But like, take it all with a pinch of salt, and also like start to think about what questions we should actually be asking within that literature, because like the number of times we're asking the wrong questions within the literature, and a question that that's never actually going to be practical for us to understand the answer to. I mean, and to your point about AI, like a lot of people keep saying, you know, oh, PT is going to be a dead industry when AI comes because they can write perfect programs and stuff like that. But like I think the whole like we're saying about science and PT, like being an evidence-based PT doesn't necessarily make you a good PT. It just means that you understand the mechanisms of what's going on. What makes you a good PT is understanding that science, like we all do, and then looking at the person in front of you and going, this probably doesn't apply to you. Or I've tried this and it's not working. So let me just figure things out. Let me like the value of like experimentation and actually, like, to coin like an old phrase, like skin in the game. Yeah. Like being a PT, like the more I'm a PT, the better I get. Yeah. And I'm not like learning more science. I'm not discovering these new fantastical things that have existed and beyond my comprehension for so long.
I've just gone, I've worked with enough people that like I can look at you and look at how you move and be like, this is probably what you need.
Yeah.
Being a personal trainer is like, I love the study side of being a PT. I love like knowing as much as you possibly can about how the human body works. But there's so much more to it than just that, because it's not just like, okay, I understand the mechanisms and I understand how to apply them in each specific case. It's like, okay, but I also need to get buy-in. I need to have rapport. I need to make sure that this client is actually doing okay, like across the board in their life. Like me turning around and going, right, your life must be perfect, so therefore this is the perfect program for you is stupid.
Yeah.
Like there's the whole thing around sales. There's the whole thing around being able to deliver as efficiently as possible. Like the number of PT purists that are there like, well, I need to individualize every single thing to this person.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but how are you doing that for all 50 of your clients?
Yeah.
Like
unless you charge loads, which they don't do, so then you can't individualize.
No. Yeah.
But it's interesting that you say it's about skin in the game, because it is, but it's like I personally don't think AI can replace in-person PTs. I think maybe one day, but I don't think it's going to be whilst I'm alive, because it's all based on heuristics. Like good coaching is about estimations. AI is really bad at heuristics. It can't do it because it's not a person. It's really good at rules. But if I put a line through a car, a lot of AI doesn't know it's a car anymore. Because it's like, that's not what a car looks like.
Yeah.
So it can't read it. But I know it's a car. You guys know it's a car.
Yeah.
We can then proceed on that basis. And that's the problem with AI programming. Can't look at a person and go, what do you enjoy? It can't go, what anime do you like? And then remember that there was like this random exercise in it that might be funny to put in for them and they'll enjoy it.
But it's the other side of it as well, of like going back to what we were just talking about. Like AI is based on the average of the information that's out there, and the majority of the information that's out there
It's bad information.
Like bad information. So like actually we should be grateful to people put out bad content, because the more bad content that's out there, the longer it's going to take for AI to program itself and catch up with like
If you're listening, Big Bad Brad, more papers.
more papers.
but I mean, yeah, it's to come back to like the whole leg extension squat thing. Like I have a client who I can't get him to squat with a barbell because he just doesn't like, he won't do it.
Yeah.
Right. And he doesn't like working hard. But I found a way to trick him because he likes sitting down on a machine. And so I just put a weight on and I say, right, I'll have 8 to 10 of those. And he does that. And I can get through the entire set of machines that we have in Sweatbox, which is a ridiculous amount of volume for a person. And he'll do 3 sets of every machine for 8 to 10 reps. And he'll be absolutely fine with it because he gets to sit down.
Is this the guy that then goes and pushes a prowler for...
No, that's not him. But this is the guy where I'm like, oh, let's back squat. No, I don't like it. Let's superset something. No, I don't like getting up and sitting down. I don't like moving between 2 places. But genuinely, that's the thing. And I'm like, I used to think, oh, maybe he's just lazy. But I'm like, no, he just really knows what he likes and what he doesn't like.
Yeah.
And like, it's my job to be like, okay, you know what you like and what you don't. And sometimes I feel like a bad coach. I'm like, I'm really not doing anything here. I'm just moving you around the kit.
Yeah.
And like, I'm just going, right, we just did a press. Let's do a pull. We've just done quads. Let's do hamstrings.
Yeah.
And it's just literally that basic, and 8 to 10 of everything. It's like the worst fucking PT program. But he does it.
It's not bad, but he does it. It's not bad because he does it.
Program because he's hit everything, right?
Yeah.
It's that whole thing of like, you know that you could design a better program, but if he's not going to do it, it doesn't matter as long as you hit all the key principles. But it's that whole thing of like, programming is actually really simple. Like from a like, you just need to make sure you hit everything that needs to be hit. However you go about doing that is fine. And the more you know, the more ways you can go around solving that problem for people.
Yeah.
But like, just because of the fact you know more doesn't mean you have to do anything more complicated if the simple thing is the thing that's going to work for that individual.
And from a health outcome perspective, it's the same.
Exactly.
Like from a performance perspective, maybe not, but like from a health outcome, it's like, you'd probably be all right just doing machines. Like it probably doesn't actually make that, like, will you be as functional in your day-to-day life? No. Will it mean you are less likely to experience sarcopenia? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, there's so much of what we know and what we can do that people just don't get. Like, you know, I have maybe like 4 or 5 clients total that I've trained over the last how many years that I've done plyometrics with, despite the fact that it's like a really, really good version of training to do, and it makes you really functional and really athletic. But most people just, they don't need it. They don't need like that level of things. Like I love Olympic lifting, but not everyone's getting a power clean.
Yeah.
Because not everyone wants to do.
And most people can't.
Yeah.
Like it's just too coordinated and you're like, okay, well, you just don't need to worry about that.
Yeah. Like if you've got 3 hours a week to train and your coach is basically taking you through 3 hours of power cleans a week.
Yeah.
Like, and badly because of the fact you still haven't got it.
Yeah, and you don't want to do
You're not
it.
getting the most out of those 3 hours, right? Like, yeah.
100%.
Right.
We should actually.
Yeah, we should wrap up.
But yeah,
Let's do it.
that was really good. I'm really
That was a
pleased you
great
came
chat.
on.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, no.
Much
Thank you for coming.
appreciated.
Boom.
Hopefully.
You don't
We
get
should have gone
fist
for
bump.
it. We should have gone for it. Yeah, no.
A little
sorry.
three-way.
Should we redo it and
Should we
get a
redo it?
three-way?
There you go.
Three-way.
Nice.
God, that goes alongside the whole geeky comment from earlier. That was a wonderful moment for me. I've never felt so involved in something cool.
Sick.
Cheers, team.
Nice.
You're very welcome. I mean, I feel like most really good personal trainers are just big nerds who have like just somehow got really jacked,
Wanted
really
to
strong,
get jacked.
and everyone just assumes that we're like these massive jocks with like, you know, lots of anger issues and like other
It's
things,
like
and
the
you're just like,
exact opposite.
yeah,
Well, it's the whole thing of like people that see me now that knew me when I grew up, like the people like Tom Wood. They've seen me go from like a 55 kilo 6 foot person to 110.
yeah.
Like, yeah, it's a bit of a difference. Back then, I definitely looked like the person I am.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I would love to have met teenager Zab.
Now I'm still the
Same.
same geek, but I just give better hugs.
I bet you were well funny.
It was awkward.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I thought that was what you meant.
Yeah,
That's what I mean.
I bet you'd have looked really in place on the set of Superbad.
Yes, that is the description.
But I would have been the guy that they didn't want to come to the party.
Right. And on that note, well, 3 key take homes from the podcast. What do you want people to know?
Basically, don't be a glass back. Just get stuck in.
Nice.
Nice. I mean, that's it.
Happy days. 1 key take home. We've covered it.
We'll
Sick.
put where they should check you out. And yeah.
Oh, where
Yeah.
they check me? Coach Tarun on Instagram. Coach_Tarun. That's actually all the social media I have because I hate it. But I just go really hard on Instagram.
And you have a new website.
Got a new website, www.differentbreedcoaching.co.uk.
Just 2 W's.
www. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, don't mess that up.
Yeah, not too much on there, but we'll expand. And then there's an email list, but you'd find that through the website or...
And you get to see the rest of the ridiculously cool team.
Yeah,
So,
and we are a cool team.
They are a cool team.
They are. I also feel like if someone types WW, that you don't want them training.
Yeah.
If you're delivering your coaching service online and someone doesn't know the
Yeah, if you
initial part
can't
of-
find our website, even with me saying that wrong, it's probably not for you.
Yeah.
Right,
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you
Beautiful.
very much for coming on.
Thanks so
Enjoy
much.
the rest of your week, guys, and we'll see you next Monday.
Yeah.
Wicked.
Take care. Beautiful.